The warm breeze swept through the coffee plantation as Rosa, her weathered hands continuing their work under the relentless sun, felt the weight of her struggles bearing down on her shoulders. The coffee leaves swayed gently, but in her mind, nothing seemed to move. The farm had been facing financial difficulties for months, and each passing day, the feeling that everything could crumble consumed her more deeply. It was then that she saw it. The shadow of a tree near the harvest caught her attention. Something unusual. The leaves were moving, but there was something different there. Something that made her heart skip a beat. Rosa, with her tired countenance, approached without understanding what she was seeing. When she got closer, her eyes widened and her heart raced. Two baby girls, alone, abandoned. The girls were lying on the dry earth, barely covered by worn pieces of cloth, their faces as fragile as life itself. The older one, probably around 2 years old, held the hand of her baby sister, a newborn still breathing heavily. There was no one around, no sign of any adult. Rosa froze for a moment as if the world had stopped, her eyes fixed on the small figures, her chest tight. She crouched down slowly, hesitant, her heart beating so hard it seemed to be outside her body. How could someone abandon 2 children like this? And why on her plantation? Doubt took hold of her. What should she do? The reality of the failing farm, the fear of more responsibilities, and the feeling that she wasn't prepared for anything more made her hesitate. But then, something inside her broke. "Come here, my dear," she whispered, approaching the older baby with outstretched arms. She didn't know what she was doing, what she was getting into, where they came from, but at that moment, all she knew was that she couldn't leave them there. The older girl looked at her with large, frightened eyes, but made no movement, only holding her baby sister more tightly, as if fearing she would be taken away. Rosa felt the weight of that responsibility settling on her. She wanted to turn her back, run away, and never return. But looking at those girls, something deep moved inside her. An inexplicable feeling, a mixture of compassion and urgency. "I'll take care of you. Don't worry. I'll take care." It was a silent promise, but one that already echoed inside her chest. She picked them up carefully, feeling the weight of those small, fragile lives in her arms. She didn't know how she would do it or what it meant for her life, but at that moment, she couldn't do anything but act. With the girls in her arms, she headed towards her house, a distant old shack. Her thoughts were quick and turbulent. What was she doing? The questions began to form, but another sensation, stronger than fear, began to take over. This was the only right thing she could do now. When she reached the door of her house, her eyes met those of Teresa, her longtime friend who was there as always to help with the farm tasks. Teresa, with a look of surprise, quickly approached, understanding the gravity of the situation. "Rosa, what is this?" Teresa asked with a trembling voice. Rosa didn't respond immediately. Her eyes were fixed on the girls as if she was still trying to understand what had just happened. "I found them in the plantation. I don't know what to do, but I'm going to take care of them." Teresa looked at the children and then at Rosa with an expression of disbelief and concern. But seeing Rosa's determined look, she knew there was no turning back. Rosa entered her house, closing the door behind her, her heart still racing, her body tense. But a sense of necessity took over. The girls were there now, and she didn't know what the future would bring. But one thing was certain: her life would never be the same. Rosa couldn't sleep that night. The girls were in the small room next door, wrapped in improvised blankets, finally asleep after hours of crying and fright. She lay looking at the wooden ceiling of her simple house, listening to the soft sound of the wind outside, but her mind was far from finding rest. What had she done? How had she gotten here? The moment of decision seemed to have been made in the blink of an eye. But now that reality was settling in, Rosa felt the weight of that choice on her shoulders. She didn't know if she was prepared to be a mother to two little girls, especially at her age and with the difficult life she led. Her own children, whom she hadn't seen in years, had never shown interest in her. She felt alone, and now with the responsibility of two entire lives, the loneliness seemed heavier than ever. Rosa knew her farm was on the brink of bankruptcy. There was no way to feed two small children with the limited resources she had. But looking at the girls sleeping peacefully, something inside her ignited. They weren't to blame for where they were or how they had gotten there. And deep down, she knew that even without knowing how, she would do whatever it took to give them a better life. The next morning, Rosa woke up to the soft light coming through the window. The smell of fresh coffee that she always prepared woke her early, and today was no different. But today, the coffee seemed bitter in her mouth, and the farm seemed quieter than ever. She took a deep breath and went to the room where the girls were still sleeping. Little Clara, who seemed so fragile, was nestled in the blankets, while Isabella, the older one, was turned to the side with a slight smile on her face. Rosa felt a lump in her throat. They were so innocent, so confident in her presence. How could she fail them? How could she do anything wrong? "I will take care of you," she murmured to herself like a silent promise, even without knowing how she would do it. But soon, reality imposed itself. The farm wasn't prospering. She had no conditions to care for anyone else. Rosa looked around the simple house and saw the small pieces of broken wood, the tiles that needed to be fixed. The farm was on the verge of financial collapse, and food was never enough. How could she give them what they needed? That's when Teresa appeared at the door. Her longtime friend, always willing to help, was there with a gentle smile, as if she knew exactly what Rosa was going through. "Rosa, are you all right?" Teresa asked, her voice soft and concerned. Rosa looked at her for a moment, feeling a mixture of shame and relief. She knew she couldn't do this alone. "Teresa, I don't know what to do. I can't take care of them alone." Teresa entered the house without hesitation, looking at the girls while Rosa watched them with a heavy heart. "You're not alone, Rosa. We're in this together. We'll find a way." Rosa sat in the old wooden chair and looked at Teresa, her eyes watering. She knew Teresa was right, but the fear of not being able to fulfill her promise troubled her, and the judgment of others. How would the community view an elderly woman adopting two little girls without having the means to do so? But the farm, the finances, "I can barely support myself," Rosa whispered, her voice breaking slightly. Teresa smiled with an understanding look. "We'll find a way. I'm here to help, and I'll always be. It's not just you who will take care of them. We'll help each other." Rosa took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. Teresa had always been by her side, helping with the plantation, with the difficult days, and always offering her support. She knew she couldn't continue with this alone, but she also knew that with Teresa, perhaps she could find a way. It was a warm morning when Joaquim Almeida appeared at the farm. Rosa was in the field, trying to figure out what could be done with the few resources she had to keep the girls fed, when she heard the sound of a truck stopping at the entrance to her property. The sound of the door slamming and the firm step on the ground caught her attention. She turned around, feeling a chill down her spine as she saw a tall, imposing man approaching. Joaquim was a stranger to her, but his presence immediately generated discomfort. His penetrating gaze examined the farm as if it were his own territory. He wore expensive clothes that didn't match the simple and rustic style of Rosa's farm. Something in the air changed when he approached. "You must be Rosa Rodriguez." Joaquim's voice was deep but not hostile, although his posture showed something authoritarian. "I am Joaquim Almeida, the girl's uncle." Rosa, still in shock from the unexpected visit, took a step back, her eyes narrowing. She still didn't know much about the girl's past, but his name sounded strange, almost as if he had come from a distant place. The idea that someone from outside, especially a man, would approach them made her tense. "The girl's uncle?" she repeated, trying to hide the incredulity in her voice. "What do you mean, uncle?" Joachim gave a dry smile, but without humor. He pulled a piece of paper from his pocket that appeared to be legal documentation. "Yes, I am the girl's uncle. Their mother is my sister. They were left under my guardianship, and now, after so long, I've come to fulfill the responsibility of taking care of them." Rosa swallowed hard, his words hanging in the air. She had doubts, many doubts. How did he know where to find them? Why only now, after so much time, did he care about the girls? Her mind began to work at 1,000 miles per hour, but she tried to keep calm. "They're fine here in my house, and I'm taking care of them." "I don't know what you're talking about." Joachim didn't seem intimidated. He advanced a step, approaching her with a determined look. "I will demand custody of them. As their uncle, it's my right, and therefore, I cannot let you continue with this." Rosa stood static, her heart beating faster. Was he serious? He wanted to take the girls from her. The tension in the air grew like a storm about to explode. "They are safe here. I found them, and I'm taking care of them," Rosa said, trying to stand firm. She knew she couldn't let this man, with his imposing bearing and air of authority, intimidate her. Joachim looked her directly in the eyes, his voice now colder. "You're being irresponsible. I will return soon with the necessary documents to resolve this. Don't try to run away, Dona Rosa." Without another word, he turned, walked back to the truck, leaving Rosa paralyzed by the pressure. The sound of the truck's engine moving away was the only sound that remained for a long moment. She looked at the house, at the girls inside it, and felt a wave of fear. What would she do if he really came back with the documents? Would she lose the girls? Joachim's promise echoed in her mind, and she knew nothing would be the same again. The battle was just beginning. The next day was filled with tension. Rosa was on the porch, observing the vastness of the farm while the sun set behind the mountains. The girls were playing on the lawn, their soft laughter contrasting with the weight in Rosa's heart. She knew she needed to act quickly, but she didn't know how. Joachim's arrival had made everything more complicated. She felt threatened, but she didn't know if he was right or if he was just trying to take the girls away from her. When the door knocked, announcing Joachim's return, Rosa already knew he was back. The idea of continuing that discussion troubled her, but she couldn't wait any longer. He had talked about taking the girls, but she needed to understand better what was happening, what was really behind this man who seemed so sure of himself. Joachim entered the house with his imposing presence once again, with that look of someone who knew what to do and how to do it. He seemed calm, but the shadow of a secret hung over him, something that Rosa still couldn't understand. "You came to take the girls then?" Rosa asked, trying to hide the frustration in her voice. "What else do you want from me?" Joachim observed her for a moment, as if pondering his words. He took a deep breath before starting to speak, his voice low but firm. "I know you have doubts, Rosa. I understand, but you need to know the truth. The whole truth." He paused as if preparing to tell something very painful. Rosa felt a chill run down her spine. What would he have to say that would change everything? Their mother, my sister, fled from an abusive relationship. Their father was violent, cruel, and she had to escape to save their lives. Joachim lowered his eyes as if that thought was too heavy to bear. She believed that if she left them here in your plantation, they would be found by someone good, someone like you, someone who would take care of them. Rosa remained silent, her mouth dry, feeling as if she had been hit by a wave of shock. Those words, abusive relationship. She looked at the girls playing outside, not knowing how to react. The man she thought was just a stranger had a connection with the girls that went far beyond what she had imagined. "But why only now, Joachim?" Rosa asked, her voice trembling. "If you knew they were right here, why did it take so long for you to appear?" Joachim took a step forward, his expression softer now, as if trying to find a way to explain something that was already out of his control. "I was looking for them everywhere, but my sister made a request. I always knew I would find them, and that by some miracle, they would be safe with someone who loved them." Rosa was in shock, her mind spinning trying to organize Joachim's words. She had taken responsibility for the girls without knowing anything about their history. She thought she was doing the right thing, but now it seemed there was much more involved. The girls weren't just two children abandoned in the plantation. They had a story, a pain, a loss that couldn't be ignored. "And what do you expect now, Joachim?" Rosa asked, her voice calmer but doubt still dominating her. "I am an elderly woman. I can barely take care of myself. Do you want to take the girls from me?" Joachim looked at her with an intensity Rosa had never seen before. He seemed so close to breaking down, but also determined. He knew the girls' lives were at stake, but his mission wasn't easy. "I'm not here to take the girls from you, Rosa. I want to ensure they have a future. And if you can't guarantee that, I'll find someone who can. They are the only family I have left." Joachim's words echoed in Rosa's mind. She looked at him, trying to understand everything that was happening. He wasn't a bad man, but she didn't know if she could trust him. He wanted what was best for the girls, but to what extent did that mean they needed to go back to him? She wanted to be their mother, but her own limitations, her failing farm, and now this new information about his sister, everything seemed so out of her control. While Rosa looked at Joachim, something else began to stir inside her. A feeling of insecurity that came from within. A sense of failure when she thought about her children, her own adult children who had drifted away. Something heavy tightened in her chest. They never came back, never apologized, and now here she was, fighting to be the mother of two girls who weren't hers, with the weight of a painful past that she barely understood. Rosa began to question her own decisions. If her children had needed her, would she have been able to care for them the same way she was trying to care for the girls? She thought about what happened with her family. She had given everything to her children, but had been rejected. Now with Isabella and Clara, she found herself at a crossroads. She didn't want to be a failed mother again, but how could she ensure she would give them what they needed when not even her own family had stayed by her side? The pain of her own past mixed with the girls' uncertain future. She felt like a stranger lost between her own choices and the responsibility she now carried. Joachim seemed to notice Rosa's internal conflict. He paused before speaking again. "I won't force you, Rosa, but you need to make a decision. The girls deserve to know the truth and deserve a future where they can be happy and safe." Rosa, with a tight chest, looked at the man before her and then at the girls playing in the field. She knew something needed to change. She needed to know more, needed more information to make the right decision. But for now, what she knew was that the girls were under her responsibility. "I'm going to need more time, Joachim," Rosa said in a low voice. "I can't make a decision so quickly. I'll need more information, and you'll have to give me that." Joachim observed her for a moment before nodding. "I'll be back soon, but when I return, I hope you'll have an answer." And with that, he turned and left, leaving Rosa with an even heavier weight in her heart. The week passed slowly for Rosa. The tension that had formed between her and Joachim hadn't dissipated. The girls, now more and more attached to her, still played and laughed around the house. But Rosa couldn't shake the feeling that something was out of her control. She knew Joaquim would return, and when that happened, her life would take another turn. When he finally returned 2 days later, Rosa's anxiety was at its peak. She watched him from afar, arriving again with the same serious expression, but this time, something different in his demeanor. He seemed calmer, but his eyes were more intense, as if he had already decided what he wanted. "Rosa," Joaquim said as he approached the house, "I come with a proposal, a way to resolve this situation once and for all." Rosa felt her heart skip a beat. She knew his proposal would change everything, but she still didn't know how to react. He pulled an envelope from his pocket and handed it to her. "I don't want you to suffer anymore with this, nor the girls. That's why I thought of something that could be good for everyone. I want to take the girls with me, but in exchange, I'll offer a substantial amount to ensure the future of your farm." Rosa looked at the envelope cautiously. Inside it, she knew there was more than just money. Joaquim was offering a solution, but the question lingering in Rosa's mind was what she really wanted. "Money? You want to pay me to hand over the girls?" Rosa asked, her voice tense, trying to hide the turmoil of emotions taking over her. Joaquim observed her without breaking eye contact. "Yes, that's right. I will ensure they have the best possible future. The money isn't just for you, but also for the farm. I know you're going through difficulties, Rosa, and you deserve the peace of mind of knowing their future is guaranteed, as well as yours." Rosa felt the weight of his words. He was right. She knew that. Her farm was in ruins, and she could barely keep things running. The money he offered could ensure a future for the girls and still give her the chance to continue with what little remained of the farm. It was a tempting proposal, but there was something that completely prevented her from accepting it. She looked at the envelope in her hands, feeling the weight of the choice she had ahead of her. She thought about the girls. The love she felt for them was undeniable, but she knew she didn't have the resources to give them what they needed. How could she be a mother to them without being able to support their basic needs? "I don't know, Joaquim. I don't know if I can do this," Rosa said, her voice failing. "They need a home, but how can I let them go?" Joaquim took a step forward with a softer expression. "Rosa, I understand your pain, but you also have to understand that with this decision, you can save your farm, ensure their future, and your own. It's not just an exchange of money. It's the guarantee that they will have the life they deserve." The tension in Rosa's chest increased. She was divided, wanting to keep the girls with her, but at the same time recognizing the harsh reality in which she found herself. She knew that deep down, Joaquim's proposal offered a practical solution to her problems, but that meant giving up what she loved most at that moment. "I need to think more about this," Rosa finally said, her mind in a whirlwind. "I don't know what's right, Joaquim. I don't know." Joaquim then paused and looked directly at her with a look that suggested he knew it wouldn't be easy for her. "Of course, I understand. But remember that by accepting the proposal, you'll be ensuring a better future for everyone. I'll be back in a few days to know your decision." He turned and began walking toward the door, leaving Rosa there with the envelope still in her hands. She knew her life would never be the same, but she didn't know what price to pay for this decision. In the days that followed Joaquim's proposal, life around Rosa became tense. The farm, which already carried the weight of its own financial problems, now faced a new kind of pressure: public opinion. The community that had always been supportive began to look at her with a mixture of curiosity and distrust. Gossip spread quickly, and people began to question her intentions. It was a cold morning when Rosa went to the local market to buy some supplies. When she entered the store, the silence that greeted her was almost palpable. The women who usually greeted her with smiles and friendly words now observed her with furtive glances. Rosa felt a twinge of discomfort, but tried to ignore it. She was used to being seen as a simple woman, always on the margins of more complicated conversations. But now, something seemed to have changed. "I heard that Joaquim Almeida appeared again around here," said Dona Carmen, one of the neighbors, as she passed by Rosa, her eyes laden with suspicion that was hard to disguise. "He's already offered money for custody of the girls." Rosa swallowed hard, but didn't respond immediately. She knew the conversation wouldn't end there. Dona Carmen, with her sharp tongue, would continue to spread words that could reach every corner of the city. "He's been around here for a while now, Rosa. He has the necessary documents. And what are you going to do? Are you going to accept this proposal? Are you going to sell the girls?" The comment was like a blow. Rosa felt her heart accelerate, a knot forming in her throat. She wanted to respond, but the words wouldn't come out. She knew her decision was being closely observed, and there was no more room for error. As the days passed, the gossip increased. Some said she should accept Joaquim's offer, sell the girls, and ensure a better future for them and the farm. Others, more sympathetic, insisted that Rosa shouldn't give in, that the girls had found a home with her, and it would be wrong to separate them now after all they had been through together. Rosa felt an immense weight. She knew she needed to make a decision, but what troubled her most were the divisions in the community. Where was right and where was wrong? Suddenly, she found herself at the center of a moral conflict, with everyone's voices around her telling her what to do, but none of them really helping her make the decision. That's when Teresa, her longtime friend, appeared once again. Teresa always had a way of seeing things simply, without letting herself be carried away by external pressures. She found Rosa sitting on the porch with her gaze lost on the horizon and sat down beside her, as she always had in the most difficult hours. "I know what's happening, Rosa. You don't need to tell me," Teresa spoke softly, "but you need to make your decision and not let anyone else decide for you." Rosa looked at Teresa, her trusted friend, and sighed deeply. What did she want to do? What was the right thing? She couldn't shake the feeling that in making a decision, she would lose something valuable, something she didn't even know she already had. "I don't know what to do, Teresa. I feel so divided. If I accept Joaquim's proposal, I can ensure their future in the farms. But is that what I really want? Am I doing this for them or for myself?" Teresa took her hand, squeezing it gently. "You've always had courage, Rosa. Don't let fear or others' expectations control you. The girls need you, not just a safe place, but someone who loves them. And you already love them. I see that in every gesture, in every smile of theirs." Teresa's words resonated with Rosa, and she felt something ignite inside her. She looked at the girls inside, playing and laughing, and something deep enveloped her. Over the days the girls had been with her, Rosa had begun to see them as her own. She had begun to notice similarities between them and her own children in their small gestures, their smiles, even the difficult moments. It didn't matter where they came from or the past. What mattered was the future she was helping to build. Rosa stood up and looked at Teresa, her eyes now clearer, more decided. "I know what I need to do, Teresa. I love them, and I can't let them go. They're part of me now. The farm can wait. What matters is that they have a home where they can grow up safely, with love." Teresa smiled, satisfied with Rosa's decision. She knew her friend wouldn't take an easy choice, but she also knew that with the love Rosa had for the girls, she was making the only decision that would make sense for her life. Rosa knew there was still much to do, and that Joaquim wouldn't give up easily. But at that moment, she had made her choice. She had a commitment to the girls and their future, and now there was no more room for doubt. When Joaquim returned again, Rosa's heart beat faster. She had already made her decision. The girls would stay with her no matter what Joachim had to say. But seeing him, a feeling of discomfort persisted. He was no longer just the mysterious man who wanted to take the girls. Something in the way he looked at her, something in his posture made Rosa begin to question her own feelings. That day, Joachim didn't bring papers or proposals. He seemed more serious, less determined to pressure her. Rosa invited him in, and they sat at the table, in the same place where many conversations had occurred. But this one was different. The weight of the decision was already upon her, but she felt there was still something she needed to understand. "I know you've made your decision, Rosa," Joachim said with unexpected calmness, "and as difficult as it has been for you, I know it was the right choice. But I need you to know more about me and about what happened to my sister. I think this will help you understand the gravity of what we're dealing with." Rosa observed him attentively, her eyes fixed on his face. Joachim didn't seem to be in a hurry, as if he were sharing an important piece of his life. She felt that perhaps she should listen more closely, understand where he came from. "My childhood wasn't easy, Rosa," Joachim began, his eyes getting lost for a moment in emptiness. "I grew up in a home marked by violence. My father, he was a cruel man. My mother, a submissive woman who always tried to do the right things, but was trapped in a cycle of abuse. My sister, she was the first to realize she needed to get out of that place." Rosa listened attentively, her feelings mixed. She had never imagined that Joachim had been through something so devastating. This made her question her own certainties even more. "But you left, didn't you?" Rosa asked in a low voice. "Why did you distance yourself from her?" Joachim gave a deep sigh, as if the question was more difficult to answer than he had imagined. "I was trying to escape too, Rosa. I knew that if I stayed, the cycle of pain would never end. So when I was 18, I left to work abroad. I thought I could solve everything from a distance, that she would be okay." He looked at Rosa with a slight tone of regret. "But the truth is that I left her alone when she needed me the most." Joachim's confession made Rosa's heart tighten. She had always known he was distant, but now she understood that this distance wasn't due to lack of affection, but due to a deep fear of getting even more involved with his sister's pain. The loneliness he had chosen for himself seemed to have been an attempt to escape from everything he couldn't control. "I looked for her several times, but it was always too late. When she finally had the courage to run away, it was already too late. She was so marked by abuse that she couldn't get back up. She asked me to take care of the girls, and I came back to fulfill her last wish." Joachim looked at Rosa with eyes full of silent weariness. "But I never thought it would be so difficult. I expected you to accept them with open arms, and that the girls could be free from the pain my sister carried." Rosa was processing Joachim's words. She felt a growing lament for everything he had been through, and at the same time, anger for him having stayed so far from his sister. But at the same time, a new perspective emerged in her mind. She wasn't dealing with just a man who wanted to take the girls from her. She was dealing with someone who, deep down, was also seeking a way to redeem himself for having failed his own family. "You failed your sister, Joachim, but perhaps there's a chance for redemption," Rosa said softly, empathy beginning to grow inside her. "Perhaps you didn't do what you should have before, but now you can start doing the right things for the girls." Joachim looked at her with an expression that mixed surprise and relief. Perhaps he had expected Rosa to condemn him, but she was offering something much more valuable, a chance to start over. The months that followed were marked by a silent but significant transformation. Rosa, with Joachim's support, was finally seeing the farm prosper again. The hard work they both put into the land began to bear fruit. The coffee trees that once seemed fragile and lifeless were now greener and more robust. The harvest that had seemed distant and uncertain was becoming a promising reality. Joachim was no longer the distant and indifferent man who had arrived at the farm. Over time, he integrated into the work with the same dedication as Rosa, and gradually his respect for her transformed into a solid partnership. He knew that the key to the farm's success wasn't just in his abilities, but also in the mutual trust that had been established between them. They now shared the same goal, ensuring the girls would have a better future. Rosa was surprised by how much Joachim really cared. The friendship between him and Teresa, which had once seemed unlikely, was now stronger than ever. Teresa, always the unconditional friend, began to help more with the farm's daily tasks, sharing laughs and stories with Joachim during work. The conversations between them, once formal and cautious, now flowed naturally, and Rosa felt a sense of peace seeing them together. They were forming a new family, one that was no longer based on blood, but on support, trust, and love. Rosa, who had previously carried the responsibility alone, could now breathe more easily. Joachim's help, Teresa's constant presence, and the girls' joy at home gave her the energy needed to continue fighting for the farm and the children's future. Every smile from Clara and Isabella was a reminder that she had made the right decision. They were safe, happy, and that was all she had ever wanted. The girls grew up healthy and strong. Isabella, now 8 years old, showed herself to be a curious child, full of life. She helped Rosa in the kitchen and loved running through the field, asking about everything she saw. Clara, at 6 years old, was shyer, but with a sweetness that won everyone over. She loved spending time with Teresa, learning to care for the plants and listening to her stories. Both flourished in an environment of love and stability, something Rosa had never imagined possible in her life. The community that had once watched her with suspicion began to accept Rosa's new family configuration. The gossip about Joachim calmed down, and people began to see what she already knew. He was there to help, not to take anything from her. Rosa felt relief realizing that the rejection she had feared was no longer an obstacle. The girls were well, and that was more than enough for most people in town. During a local celebration where residents gathered to celebrate the harvest festivities, Rosa was surrounded by some neighbors. Donna Carmen, who had once been the most suspicious, approached with a smile. "You did well, Rosa. Joachim and the girls. I now see that you made the right choice," Donna Carmen said with an expression of approval. Rosa smiled at her, a smile of relief, knowing that finally the community accepted what she had done. She was no longer alone. The farm prospered, and her family, though unconventional, was stronger than ever. In the following days, as the coffee was being processed and the harvest was celebrated, Rosa sat on the porch with Teresa, watching the girls play in the distance. She felt a peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. She was no longer alone, not just in terms of support, but in her heart. The girls, Joachim, Teresa, and even the farm were now an extension of her own life, the life she had always imagined possible. "I couldn't have done this without you, Teresa," Rosa said, looking at her friend with gratitude. Teresa smiled, her eyes shining. "You were stronger than you imagine, Rosa. I was just here to help carry the load. But you made all this possible." Rosa looked at the field and for a moment felt that she had finally found the balance she was looking for. Love, dedication, and trust had restored not just her farm, but her life. She had the girls, Joachim, and the most loyal friend anyone could have. Together, they were creating something lasting, something stronger than any adversity. The farm was flourishing, just as she and the girls were. And at that moment, Rosa knew that even without all the answers, She had found her happiness in the most unlikely place. Looking at her unconventional but loving family, Rosa finally understood that sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as challenges, and that love, in its purest form, knows no boundaries of blood or circumstance. The warm breeze that once brought two abandoned girls to her coffee plantation had now brought her something even more precious, a complete family, bound not by obligation, but by choice and love.